So I will be talking about redirects first, and I would like to say that there are some exercises, or rather some files, that can be used, even though there are not a lot of need in this chapter. But there is a directory called redirects NV-link in the exercises directory, and I'm going to go into that one. So I'm ready there. So redirects. And we're going to talk about I/O redirection. And usually, when you have some standard input, it will be coming from the keyboard or mouse, things like this. And standard output will go to the screen. So, like you have here, you type something, it's going to be posted on the screen. There's also something called standard error. And that is any errors that comes from you trying to run a command. And all of those can be redirected with Linux commands. So first we will learn about redirection in general, and then we'll see for the standard input, standard output, and standard error. And I have made an attempt to draw this in GIMP, which probably wasn't the best choice. But here you have keyboard, you have a stream here, standard in, and then you have your command or process, and then you will have standard out and standard error, and it goes to the screen. And this is how it looks in general. You can redirect so that instead of those two going together to the screen, they might go one to a file or the other to a file or both to a file. And an example, for instance, you run a command, you say ls, as I just did. It throws output to the screen. But what if you don't want the output to go to the screen? What if you want to save it to a file instead? Well, you have already seen this many times in this course. You redirect it, and that is output redirection with this arrow. And as mentioned earlier, redirects are useful, and particularly so if you're working with large outputs, inputs, or multiple outputs or inputs, or if you simply just want to save your output for later. And also, of course, like we talked about with pipes, it might be that you actually want to save the output from one command and use it as input for another command. Usually you do it with pipes, and it should say morning here. But you can also save the intermittent result to file, and that is sometimes what you want. Now, redirection is not just redirection, there are several types of it. There is overwrite redirection, append redirection, and merge redirection. Short can be said that overwrite redirection, if you use that, then each time you send it to a file, you just overwrite what was already there. If you use append redirection, then you append to the file. And if you use merge redirection, then you can merge the redirected output from, for instance, standard out and standard error. But we will talk more about that slowly here. So let's start out with override redirection, and that is what we have generally done today and otherwise when you make a file instead of doing a pipe. But you can also just have your command or your process program output something, and then usually you would use override redirection, so it overwrites the file if you're using the same one. And standard output is this larger than, and the less than is standard input. So just briefly here, the reason we are talking about this 0, 1, and 2. When a new program is run, the kernel will create a table of file descriptors for our program, and they are pointers to files. And as convention, the first 3 of the entries in the table, that are the descriptors 0, 1, and 2, are used as standard input, or written as std_in, standard output, written like this, and standard error, written like that. And that is why I am using this 0, 1, and 2 here in my illustration. And the full syntax of the redirection operator would include an optional file descriptor. So here it was that it was standard out and it was standard in. And usually you just write them like this. So if you're redirecting standard out to a file, like you would do here, then as usual, standard in goes to your command from your keyboard, and then the standard out is redirected to a file, and standard error still goes to the screen. You could also redirect standard error to a file. And in that case, you would put a 2 here instead. So, some examples. And again, I said in this redirect env link directory. And of course, if you just, you can create a file. For instance, you do ls and you redirect it to my ls output.txt. And then you get this here. And it's just the content. And as you could see, you could also put a 1 here in front. And let's try and do the same thing. And then put 1. And there is no difference. Anything you write after the larger than arrow is written to myfile.txt, if you call it that. And you can end it with Control D. And this is a way of sending text to a file, for instance. And this will continue to accept input until you end it with Control D. So let's try. Let's say cat my file text. And then now it is open for writing. This is some content. And then I hold down Control and push D. And then we should now have a file called my file. Let's see what's in it. That is the content I just wrote. And as you can see, it is literally just that content. There was no new line. So there's also no new line when I output the content. And if you wanted to give the input of my file to cat, then you could also do it like this. And then it will output it just like it did before. And you could split standard error and standard output, such as you would send the standard error to error log. And that, as I said, you do again with this arrow here, but you then put the 2 there. Then it sends the standard error to the error.log. So if you try to run something that generates an error, it will go there. And you could, for instance, try, let's try run a program that doesn't exist. and it says no such file or directory. If you do that and then say to redirect to error log, then we get an error log that has this content, the error. You could instead try running the program image find, which actually does something but also throws an error. And that means you would get a different message in the error log file. Okay, that was overwrite redirection. Append redirection is very much the same, except that here you append it to what is already there. So what is in the file you created will remain there, and you put the new stuff after it. And you do that with two right arrows or two left arrows. And if you want, you can try and code along. I am again going to use what is in the redirects env link, and well, this file, my file, I actually was the one that I created. So I will show you there's something in it. Still, this is a content. Now I would like to add more text to it. And I'm doing that with echo. And then the text to append. And I will do like this, and then I will say more text. And then I will append it to my file text. So let's see what's in it. This is what we had there to begin with. And there was no new line, so I appended it directly. If I'm now appending even more to it, let's just say hello. Then we will again get more input to it. So it appends it. You can also append one file you have to another. So let's first see what is in this and what is in file 2. And then we will take file 1 and append it to file 2. Let's see what is now in file 2. Now file 2 contains what was there, and also the line from file 1. You can also do the same thing and throw the content to the screen at the same time by adding a 0 here. And let's try do that. Remember, 0 is standard in, and that means that it takes what it was supposed to send to file 2 and send it to file 2, but it also sends to the screen. So what about the standard input here? A common way to use it is you could let the program know what the ending text is. And we again using delimiters. You remember delimiters from earlier, and that is something the file would, or the program would be looking for, either to divide by that or to stop when it sees it. So it's something that will have a special meaning for the program. And you can pick anything, but a common thing to pick is simply the 3 letters EOF. And if, for instance, wanted to count lines or whatever here from the input, then you could say run word count on the input that you receive until you see the delimiter EOF. So we can try and do that. And you could try and do that as well. So it gets this command here. It now is ready to receive this input, and it will continue to receive input until it sees EOF, or end of file. And then it saw the word EOF, and then it counted the lines before that, and the words and the characters. Then we only need one more part about redirection, namely merge redirection. And there you redirect output of a command or program to a file descriptor instead of to the standard output. And the syntax is that you could take stream 1's output and merge it with stream 2. Or you could merge the input from stream 1 with stream 2. And you would write it like this. Remember from earlier, file descriptor 0 is the input, 1 is the output, and 2 is the error. So sometimes you want to write more than one output stream to the same file. And very commonly, this is standard output and standard error. And to do that, you would do something like this. You would take the command, and then you would redirect it to a file. And then you would say that the standard error should be redirected to what 1 is redirected to. And that means you are getting both the standard output and the standard error to the same. A little bit longer, you can write it like this. It might be more descriptive because remember, this takes stream 1, the standard output, and redirects it to the file. And then we are telling it, take the standard error, redirect it also to what standard output is redirected to. So it would look like this here. Standard in is still the same. It goes to the command from the keyboard. But standard out and standard error both goes to output error file. So an example is where you send both the standard output and the standard error to the file mylog.log. So as you saw before, it is this line here, and there could be a 1 in front of the arrow here if you wanted to, but it's not necessary because this is the default meaning. And then it would send errors and output to this file, mylog.log. Yeah, so this is what I said before. And there are some exercises, and despite we being a little bit over time, let's still take 3 minutes and do the exercises.